Can't believe I'm doing this, but I am going to attempt to predict the plot for Rwby Queendom, the Rwby anime that's going to come out. Now, without even looking up any of the material, I've just seen some pictures of what, Pyrrha is apparently going to look like in her red dress and shit. I've just, obviously seen the basic designs of the four girls and a few promotion material. I have not seen anything beyond that. Really, just, the basic design, and I think the first trailer, that was all I've seen. But after seeing the first trailer, everything just kind of clicked, because what expectations I had before the trailer got squashed. And with the art style, I immediately picked up on a few things. And once I learned how many episodes there were going to be, and once I learned that there's a different timeline, but not necessarily at the beginning of Queendom. No, it starts off in the same Volume 1 setting, but then it alters into a different timeline. Basically, then I kind of pieced everything together, and that's where I think I've predicted everything. And why? Well, let's just jump into everything, people. One, before watching the trailer, based on who was making it, my expectations were on the level of Fate Zero and Madoka Magica. I was really, really hyped for this. I thought we were going to get some top grade animation. And if you think I'm already shitting on the series, it's not wrong to have this level of animation. Just think, we're getting Jujutsu Kaisen, we're getting Demon Slayer level animation. That's normal in the anime community these days, to pump out this level of shit. That's the standard for shonen level shit these days. That's just what they do. And the people involved in Rwby Queendom are known for bringing these series to life. But there's one particular person who's involved in the creation of Rwby Queendom that has actually worked on a different product in the past. Worked on something 10 years ago, a decade ago. Something I'm a big fan of, and I own right here on DVD, of all things, because that's the only way you're gonna own it. This thing is not released on Blu-ray. It's the Black Rock Shooter anime. It's very hard to get a hold of. Literally, I tried looking for it online. Finding the Japanese version's very easy. The English version's not. I found it randomly at a convention. Very randomly, and it just, the DVD version cost me a bit to just pick that up. But if you do your research into Black Rock Shooter, the art style of Black Rock Shooter, you'll see that Rwby Queendom is based off Black Rock Shooter. Exact. You'll see the eyes, the body structure, everything. So Rwby Queendom's art style, graphics, everything is a decade old. It's not something that is modern. It's not something that's even 5 years old. It's a decade old. Basically 2010 animation, give or take. So that was already a bit disappointing in itself, because one of the staff members worked on Black Rock Shooter, was the concept artist for it. Not a bad thing, but that's the limit of the person that worked on it. He was a concept artist. Now I want to just state that both the story and the action of Black Rock Shooter is fucking amazing. But the guy that's working on Rwby Queendom was the concept artist. He wasn't the fight choreographer or the story writer of Black Rock Shooter. So he, just maybe helped design, or maybe he was just a drawer. He wasn't even, he's a concept artist. So give or take what you will on that. I don't know where to go beyond that. But what I'm going to predict, though, is a very, very similar tale to the Black Rock Shooter anime. Because that's how I think, though, despite the fact of there are a few very popular names mentioned working on Rwby Queendom, such as the producer of Fate Zero, who I think literally they just threw his name on it. I really don't think he's actually doing much for Rwby Queendom. Like, I don't think he's actually fucking involved in it at all. I think they just slapped his name on it for recognition. But in terms of the story, I think what they're gonna do in like the first 2 to 3 episodes, probably 2 episodes, but they could go 2 to 3 episodes if they're gonna push it. But it will be a few episodes max. Is they're gonna establish Volume 1 as they do, and Weiss is gonna be the trigger. The whole thing about Rwby being the leader, and fuck Rwby being the leader. Weiss wanted to be the freaking leader, and wish I never came to this goddamn school. And there's gonna be some freaking device that causes Weiss to never go to Beacon. What if she stayed in Atlas and got to be the leader that she always was, and got all the power and shit that she always wanted. And that's what's gonna lead to this alternate friggin' bloody timeline. It could be the fact that Weiss has access to the crown, or the relic of Beacon. It could be that Ospen gives her access for some stupid fucking reason. Instead of her talking to Port or Oobleck, Ospen just turns around and goes, "Oh, you thought you should be leader? Here's the relic. Put it on. See how it fucks with your fucking head. It fucked with my head in the past. Here, Weiss, try it out." And she puts it on, and it leads to a whole fucking different timeline where she's the bloody queen of queen bitchiness, and she has to fix it up her fucking self. And why I think this could be very similar to Black Rock Shooter, because I reckon a lot of people haven't watched Black Rock Shooter, is the main character herself, towards the end, has like a mental breakdown. You see, the whole aspect of all the main characters in Black Rock Shooter have some sort of like mental disabilities. Well, not mental disability. Well, yeah, technically they are. You got to remember, this was made like 10 years ago, and people actually had mental disabilities back then. They didn't get triggered over the fact that they had mental disabilities. They weren't afraid to fucking admit them. These days, people get triggered about such freaking things. But all the girls had, like, different anxieties and different disabilities and shit. And that's why they had these avatars in this separate world that kind of represented all different aspects of shit that they were dealing with to the extreme. And the main character has, like, when she has her mental breakdown, it causes like a shift in personality where she goes from Black Rock Shooter to insane Black Rock Shooter. She goes from being black and blue with the white star to purple and black. Goes nuts. And after overcoming all her friends in the alternate world, and when she gets enough strength back to actually re-enter the world and face her insane version of herself, you see where I'm going with this? I think this is going to happen in Rwby Queendom. In the same essence, I don't think that she's going to have to kill her friends like in Black Rock Shooter. In Black Rock Shooter, they went around killing each other because they're just avatars of themselves. So it was a journey on finding the avatars and killing the avatars, and then at the end, her insane self killed her gun, and then she combined the power of all her friends into a rainbow gun, power of friendship type gun, and destroyed her evil self. Because, instead of fighting by herself, she was fighting with her friends, and she destroyed her self that was obsessed with power. That was, you get the point I'm trying to make? Instead of herself that was obsessed with power, she became a version of herself that was accepting of being with friends. And with the power of her friends, she destroyed the version of herself that was obsessed with power. And that's the story of Black Rock Shooter. And I see something like that happening in Rwby Queendom with Weiss, where Weiss might go on a journey to find, Rwby, Blake, and Yang. I don't think she has to kill them, but she has to go on a journey to accept them. This could lead to like a split personality of Weiss. To an extent, perhaps, we could see a good version of Weiss and an insane version of Weiss in the same world. And it could lead to Team Rwby versus this, crazy, insane Atlas Weiss that they have to verse. And only through accepting that, Rwby is the true leader of Team Rwby and defeating this insane power-hungry Weiss, do they get back to the Volume 1 timeline. And I think that's what's going to be the whole plot of Rwby Queendom. In which case, it's pretty much a lot of inspiration and a very much copy of Black Rock Shooter. I mean, they've copied the friggin' art style. The plot is pretty much the same. The only thing they don't do is kill the friggin' girls that they go around, and they pretty much can't. Technically, they could kill Rwby, Blake, and Yang. I mean, they're in a separate friggin' timeline. Killing them's not gonna do nothing if they return to the original timeline, so they can technically kill them. But then it doesn't make sense how she's gonna friggin' gain their friggin' power. It made sense in the Black Rock Shooter world to gain their friggin' power because it had to do with the whole friggin' eyes constantly watching over her type thing. it's complicated in Black Rock Shooter. Um, but yeah, in Rwby, I can just see them, gathering their strength, coming to an understanding. It's a different aspect, but honestly, that's my prediction. I'm not saying I'm necessarily right. I'm not saying I'm 100% going into this, but just based on who's creating it, the art style, the very few things I know about this, how many episodes, and the fact that this is based around Weiss solely, I'd say that's a very safe bet for what this series is aiming to do. And the main reason I'm just making this video is to cover my own ass, to say that if this comes out in a month's time from now, I actually had this prediction about fucking a month and a half, 2 months ago. I was actually talking. I remember I mentioned it to a crack video maker, Mercury Black. He makes crack comedy videos. We've been chatting on Twitter DMs about because I mentioned a lot of Black Rock Shooter to him. I've been showing him like AMV videos and shit. So even if you don't believe me, and you're a fan of his crack videos, by all means, go to him and just be like, "Whoa, is this anime art guy full of shit or something?" Go ask him. I've been chatting to him for friggin' ages. I'm a fan of his friggin' content. I may not be the biggest Rwby fan anymore, but I still keep up to date with like fan-made shit. I support like Celtic Phoenix's Rewrite. I support crack videos. I support people who make friggin' art of like friggin' Rwby, because they still like when they do like friggin' art, I still appreciate the work that goes into the friggin' art. I don't appreciate the original product anymore. The original product of Rwby just pisses me off to all hell. But I can still appreciate people in the fandom and the hard work they do. I will say that much. And that's just me giving my point of view on Rwby Queendom. That's my prediction.